Soy sauce may not sit at the center of every American table, but in countless kitchens across Asia, it's the heartbeat of flavor. A dash over steaming rice, a brush on salmon, a swirl through noodles, it's what turns simple food into something alive. You smell it before you taste it, warm, savory, deep, almost like the memory of fire and grain. It carries stories older than recipes themselves. But today, many bottles on store shelves have drifted far from that soul. What once took months in wooden barrels is now rushed through tanks in days. Additives replace time, caramel replaces craft, and the sodium that lingers long after dinner quietly strains the heart. We all deserve better flavor that nourishes, not fools. In this video, we'll uncover 5 soy sauce brands you should avoid, and 2 that still honor real taste. Stay until the end. Soy sauce isn't as light as it looks. Uno la choy. It tastes sharp the first time you try it. A little bitter, a little burnt, and heavy on the tongue. The salt kicks first, then lingers, leaving a metallic trace that clings to the back of your mouth. There's no roundness, no slow bloom of flavor, just an instant jolt like salt water pretending to be soy. That's a la choy. Most people wouldn't guess that this sauce never saw a fermentation barrel. It's not brewed, not aged, not alive. Instead of letting time break down soybeans naturally, la choy relies on a method called acid hydrolysis. In simple terms, it uses chemicals to split soy proteins apart in a matter of hours, a process that replaces slow fermentation with industrial speed. The result looks like soy sauce, but the flavor and chemistry are very different. The shortcut comes with a cost. When soy proteins are treated with hydrochloric acid and then neutralized with sodium carbonate, a compound called 3-MCPD can form as a byproduct. Both the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and the European Food Safety Authority have studied it for years because high levels were once linked to kidney and reproductive damage in animal studies. The agencies now set strict limits for how much 3-MCPD can appear in food, especially in hydrolyzed sauces. Most modern manufacturers comply, but the concern remains the process itself makes something that should never have existed in a naturally brewed product. Beyond that, there's the sodium. A single tablespoon of la choy contains around 900 milligrams of sodium, almost 40% of the daily recommended limit for older adults. Unlike traditional soy sauces that gain flavor from long fermentation, fast-made versions lean on salt to cover the missing depth. That extra sodium doesn't just make the food saltier, it builds silent pressure inside the body. Dr. Emily Carter, a nutrition scientist at Johns Hopkins Medicine, explains it simply. Most people think of sodium as something you sweat out, but when your kidneys work overtime to flush it, your blood pressure rises. Over years, that constant strain becomes a risk for your heart, your arteries, and your brain. To balance flavor, la choy adds caramel color, corn syrup, and potassium sorbate ingredients that make the liquid dark and shelf-stable but don't add any true nutrition. Caramel color, especially the class 3 and IV types, can contain trace amounts of 4-MeI, a compound that California lists under Proposition 65 for potential cancer risk. The FDA allows it in small amounts, yet the question remains, why put it there at all when real soy sauce doesn't need it? Nutritionists often say that the danger isn't in one meal, it's in habit. The small splash you add to rice the drizzle in a stir-fry, the dip for dumplings over months and years, that routine can add up to thousands of milligrams of sodium, and repeated exposure to chemical residues. The flavor seems harmless because it's familiar, but the science behind it tells another story. Real soy sauce doesn't rush. It breathes. It ferments slowly, letting natural enzymes develop a rounded umami that never needs disguise. La choy's speed may save money and time, but it sacrifices what matters most: safety, flavor, and trust. Because sometimes the quickest way to taste isn't the healthiest path to take. To Kroger Light. Kroger Light. The name alone sounds like a promise, something softer, gentler, made for those trying to do better. It sits on the shelf with a clean blue label whispering that it's lighter, safer, and easier on the body. But twist the cap and the truth comes out fast. The first drop hits the tongue with a jolt, sharp, thin, oddly sweet. It burns for a second, then fades into a metallic aftertaste that clings like residue. It doesn't deepen, doesn't mellow, doesn't build warmth in the dish. It just stays there. Flip the bottle and the label tells the rest of the story. Instead of fermented soybeans and wheat, you see hydrolyzed soy protein, corn syrup, caramel color, and potassium sorbate. That's not brewing, it's chemistry. In traditional soy sauce, microbes transform soy and grain, slowly breaking proteins into natural amino acids and releasing subtle sweetness. But in Kroger Light, acids do the job in hours. What would take months in wooden barrels is replaced by a tank, a formula, and a shortcut. The result is liquid that looks dark but tastes flat. Natural soy sauce feels layered. You sense salt depth, a slow warmth that binds food together. This one feels unfinished, like a song with half its notes missing. It's not because it's gentle, but because it's empty. Health-wise, the story isn't brighter. 1 tablespoon still holds around 500 milligrams of sodium, nearly a quarter of what many older adults should consume in a day. That's before counting the sweeteners and flavor enhancers that mimic depth. Dr. Laura Kim, a dietitian from UCLA, explains, "When salt is replaced by chemical boosters, your body still responds as if it's taking in too much. The kidneys keep working harder and blood pressure climbs. For people with heart or kidney conditions, even small habits repeated daily can build up faster than they realize. But the bigger loss is something no nutrition label shows: the loss of flavor's soul. A real soy sauce moves through food like a shadow of warmth. It doesn't sting or stick. It lingers gently. Its aroma carries grain, wood, and time. As one 70-year-old home cook from Osaka once said, real soy sauce doesn't bite, it hugs. She still brews her own in small jars, stirring every few days, waiting for it to breathe. You can taste patience, she told me, smiling. That's what makes it clean. Try cooking with both and the contrast is clear. Real soy sauce darkens slowly in the pan, coaxing out sweetness from onions and garlic. Kroger Light scorches fast, turning bitter and uneven. The sauce that promised less ends up giving you less in every sense: less depth, less comfort, less trust. True health doesn't come from lighter labels or clever words. It comes from ingredients that keep their honesty. If a bottle claims to be better but forgets the craft that made it worth tasting, it isn't really lighter, it's just lost. 3 Kum Kee. Have you ever wondered why something labeled premium still needs flavor enhancers? Why a brand that claims heritage and craftsmanship depends on chemicals instead of time? That's the story of Kum Kee Premium Soy Sauce, a bottle that looks like tradition but runs on modern compromise. At first glance, it feels trustworthy. The bottle stands tall, capped with gold, the label framed with Chinese characters and elegant typography. It looks like the kind of product that's been perfected over a century. But if you flip it around, you'll see a different truth hiding in the ingredients list: sodium benzoate caramel color and flavor enhancers like disodium, inosinate, and disodium guanylate. These aren't signs of luxury, they're markers of a process designed to mimic the flavor that patience once provided. Here's why it happens. Real soy sauce takes time, sometimes up to a year, to ferment naturally. That long fermentation develops complex amino acids and natural glutamates that give true umami depth. But time is expensive, and natural fermentation can be unpredictable. Temperature, humidity, and bacterial culture all affect the result. For a company selling millions of bottles worldwide, those variables are considered risks. So the solution is to cut fermentation short and use additives to fill the gaps. Flavor enhancers like disodium, inosinate, and guanylate act like microphones for salt. They make the sodium taste louder without actually adding more. Caramel color darkens the sauce, giving it the rich look of aged shoyu, and sodium benzoate stretches shelf life far beyond what natural brewing allows. The result is uniformity. Every bottle tastes the same, looks the same, lasts the same. What changes is the connection to authenticity. Pour it into a spoon and you can sense the difference. The color gleams dark and glossy, but the smell stings slightly more chemical than woody. The flavor rushes in bold but shallow salt hits first, then vanishes before you can name what comes next. It's not unpleasant, but it feels rehearsed, like a performance repeated too many times. That's the hidden system behind many premium condiments. Not fraud, but formula, a controlled imitation of something that used to breathe. Additives keep costs stable, shorten production time, and make global logistics easier. In the end, the bottle looks more refined than ever, but the process behind it becomes more mechanical. Dr. Aaron Wells, a nutrition specialist at the Cleveland Clinic, describes it this way: these sauces aren't dangerous by themselves. The concern is how they train your taste buds. You start needing stronger salt and sweetness to feel the same satisfaction. That's what we call salt fatigue. In simple terms, your tongue adjusts upward. Food without those artificial enhancers begins to taste dull, even when it's real. Meanwhile, the marketing holds tight to the image of craftsmanship. Words like heritage, premium, and rich flavor are printed proudly. The logo carries the weight of culture, giving buyers the comfort of tradition. But behind that image is a process built for efficiency, not heritage, not craft, not patience. In a small Asian grocery store in California, a woman once picked up that familiar gold-capped bottle. She turned it in her hands, read the fine print, and shook her head. "It's not the same anymore," she said softly. "They've turned patience into powder." Then she put it back on the shelf and walked away. And she was right. The flavor that once came from time now comes from chemistry, a shift so quiet, most people never taste the difference. For great value. You see it every time you shop the plain label, the small price, and that comforting phrase, naturally brewed. For most people, great value soy sauce feels like a smart choice. Why pay more when this one looks simple, honest, and does the same job? But the word cheap in food always has a story, and this one begins inside a factory, not a kitchen. In real brewing, soybeans and roasted wheat are mixed with salt water and left to ferment for months, even a year. The mixture changes slowly, guided by bacteria and yeast that live and breathe through the seasons. Brewers check temperature, smell, and taste, making small adjustments. The result is a deep, rounded umami, a balance of salt, sweetness, and warmth that only time can create. Inside industrial soy sauce plants, the story moves much faster. Here the goal is to make thousands of gallons that all taste identical every week. Fermentation tanks are made of steel, not wood. The air smells of metal, salt, and steam, not grain or age. Workers in blue uniforms monitor digital screens instead of tasting barrels. Enzymes are added to speed up the breakdown of soy protein trimming, months of natural fermentation down to a few weeks. Once the sauce reaches a minimum flavor threshold, the process stops. The liquid is filtered, darkened with caramel color, and stabilized with sodium benzoate or lactic acid so it can sit on shelves for months. Technically it's brewed, but only in the same way a sprint is a kind of marathon, shorter, louder, and missing what makes the journey matter. That's how great value keeps the price low. It's not about cutting corners out of greed, it's about the system. Fast fermentation means less warehouse space, fewer tanks, less time, and more output. Every batch is timed, logged, and moved on schedule. Workers are paid to keep machines running, not to wait for flavor. As one former production supervisor told a food magazine years ago, "We don't age sauce, we manage it. When you pour it, you can tell." The liquid runs thin reddish-brown instead of deep amber. It smells a bit sour with a quick salty sting. Over rice or noodles, it adds salt but no depth. It fills the gap but doesn't lift the dish. It's serviceable, not soulful. Compare that to traditional soy sauce. A true brew has texture, it feels alive. It deepens the taste of vegetables, rounds off the sharpness of garlic, and lingers gently on the palate. The difference isn't just taste, it's what patience does to food. It turns ingredients into memory. Dr. Elena Morris, a food chemist at UC Davis, puts it simply: industrial brewing isn't wrong, it's efficient. But efficiency always carries a flavor debt. What you gain in speed, you lose in soul. The low price of great value soy sauce isn't just a bargain. It's a trade-off between time and trust. The workers meet their quotas, the factory hums, and the shelves stay full. But the flavor that once required seasons to grow is now compressed into weeks. In one corner of the plant, a worker once joked, "If we stop the pump for a day, someone somewhere won't have dinner." He smiled, but there was fatigue behind it. Because in a system built on speed, even rest becomes too expensive. 5 carry out. Coincidentally, one of my colleagues once told me a story about his favorite soy sauce. His name is Kenji, born in Osaka, now living in California, and for years his go-to was carry out, the tiny soy sauce packets that come with takeout meals. He kept a few in his drawer at work and tucked some in his lunch bag every day. "They remind me of home," he'd say, tearing one open, squeezing it over rice or noodles. The salt, the color, the smell. It wasn't perfect, but it was familiar. Then one afternoon something shifted. During lunch, Kenji poured one packet into a spoon just to taste it on its own. It hit wrong, he told me. Too black, too sharp, too chemical. It didn't taste like soy or wheat, it tasted like burnt sugar and metal. Later that night, curiosity pushed him to look it up. What he found surprised him. Carry-out soy sauce isn't brewed at all. It's made from water, salt, corn syrup, caramel color, and preservatives, no fermented soybeans, no wheat, no aging process. Just a chemical blend built to look and act like the real thing. Kenji said the discovery left him silent for a while. "I used to think that flavor was home," he said softly. But it wasn't home. It was just something pretending to be. He told me about his grandmother, a patient woman who made soy sauce in clay jars behind their old house in Osaka. She used to call it black patience. Every few days, she'd stir the jars with a wooden spoon, letting the air and sunlight work their slow magic. "You have to listen to it," she would tell him. "It whispers when it's ready." The smell was unforgettable, warm, grainy, sweet, like roasted wheat, alive in a way no factory could copy. When Kenji opened that packet again the next day, the difference felt almost personal. It didn't smell like her anymore, he said. It smelled like the world trying to hurry. After that, he stopped using them. He went searching for soy sauce that still felt alive. Now he carries a small glass bottle wherever he goes, real brewed soy sauce, sometimes Japanese tamari, sometimes locally made in small batches. It's slower, more expensive, he admits, but it feels like something my grandmother would nod at. He smiled when he remembered her words, "Real soy sauce doesn't rush. It breathes with you." A few weeks ago, we had lunch at a small sushi bar downtown. The waitress dropped off a pile of carry-out packets next to our plates. Kenji just chuckled, pushed them aside, and reached into his bag. Out came the tiny bottle he always carries. He drizzled just a few drops over his food. The color looked softer, like sunlight through amber glass. The smell rose gently, not loud but warm, a scent that felt alive. He looked at his plate for a moment, then said, "This one still remembers who it is." And maybe that's the difference we forget in a world chasing convenience. The real flavor of life doesn't come sealed in plastic. It takes patience, memory, and a little care to breathe again. For a long time, stories like Kenji's made me wonder, had real soy sauce disappeared completely? It hasn't. Hidden among the crowded shelves, a few bottles still carry the honesty of true brewing. Their makers refuse shortcuts, letting nature and time do the work. No enhancers, no preservatives, just soybeans, wheat salt, and patience. When you open one, the scent rises soft and deep, like earth after rain. It reminds you that flavor isn't magic or marketing, it's care bottled. And those rare brands prove that integrity can still taste as rich as memory itself. Kikkoman. There's a kind of peace that comes from opening a bottle of Kikkoman naturally brewed soy sauce. The cap turns with a soft click. The scent rises gently, not harsh or heavy, but deep, rounded, and calm. It feels like the kind of aroma that doesn't rush to impress. It simply arrives confident that time has already done the work. Made from just 4 ingredients: water, soybeans, wheat, and salt. Kikkoman is a celebration of patience. There's no caramel color, no preservatives, no enhancers. The flavor you taste is born entirely from months of natural fermentation, where microorganisms slowly turn soy proteins and starches into a symphony of amino acids and natural glutamates. Every drop carries the trace of thyme salt mellowed by sweetness, earth lifted by warmth. Inside Kikkoman's traditional breweries in Noda, Japan, the process still feels more like listening than manufacturing. The tanks stand tall and still, some made of cedar, others stainless steel polished by years of use. Workers describe their job as supervising nature. They don't control the fermentation, they guide it. The soybeans breathe, the wheat darkens the liquid, thickens, and day by day the aroma changes. It takes several months before the mash called moromi becomes ready. When it's finally pressed and filtered, the liquid shines amber brown under light, clear but alive like wood polished by age. The scent is soft and balanced, a little sweet from the wheat, a little smoky from the fermentation, a little sea-like from the salt. When poured over rice or vegetables, it doesn't dominate, it completes. There's a reason this sauce has been trusted for more than 3 centuries. Families across Japan have passed it from one generation to the next. It traveled overseas after World War II, finding its way into American kitchens, where it taught people that flavor could be both simple and profound. Unlike the fast synthetic sauces that fill the shelves, Kikkoman doesn't perform, it belongs. Taste it carefully and you can feel layers salt first, then the warmth of roasted grain, then a whisper of sweetness that lingers. It's the kind of balance that only comes from fermentation allowed to live at its own pace. Scientists might call it enzymatic harmony. Most people would just call it real. But what makes Kikkoman special isn't only its method. It's the emotion it carries, the humility of a process that has never needed to change just to keep up. There's no marketing trick, no false nostalgia. Only time honesty and a kind of craftsmanship that respects both science and soul. A few weeks ago, I met Kenji again, the same colleague who once told me about his disappointment with those takeout packets. He smiled when I asked what he uses now. From his bag, he pulled out a small glass bottle with Kikkoman's red cap. "This one listens," he said, grinning. "It reminds me of my grandmother's jars. She would have liked it." He poured a few drops onto his rice and the aroma lifted gentle and warm. Watching him, I realized something simple. Kikkoman isn't just soy sauce, it's patience you can taste. And maybe that's what makes it timeless. In a world where everything races forward, this little bottle proves that flavor still waits for those who respect it. Seven Yamasa. Before we end this video, I want to share something personal. A few days ago, after seeing Kenji with his small bottle of Kikkoman, I suddenly found myself craving sushi. It was one of those calm evenings when hunger feels less like appetite and more like comfort. So I walked down to a small sushi bar that had just opened near my apartment. Nothing about the place looked special: a few wooden stools, a low counter, soft jazz coming from an old speaker. The chef worked quietly, his hands moving with patient rhythm, as if each gesture had been practiced 1,000 times. When my plate arrived, it looked humble: 2 pieces of salmon nigiri, 1 tuna, 1 tamago, and a small dipping dish of soy sauce. The label said Yamasa. I didn't think much of it, just another brand, I figured. But when I dipped the nigiri lightly and took that first bite, everything stopped. The flavor didn't shout. It whispered. It spread slowly, deep and balanced, wrapping around the rice and fish like a blanket of warmth. It was smooth, grounded, and somehow emotional, like a hug from someone you haven't seen in years, the kind that tells you you're home again. I sat there for a while, unsure why it moved me so much. It wasn't just delicious, it was familiar. Later that night, I decided to learn more about Yamasa soy sauce, and what I discovered truly impressed me. Yamasa has been brewing soy sauce since the 17th century in Choshi, Japan, a seaside town where the air smells of salt and fermenting grain. Their philosophy is simple but unshakable. Soy sauce is not something you make, it's something you raise. Each batch begins with whole soybeans, roasted wheat, salt water, and thyme. No shortcuts, no defatted beans, no additives pretending to be age. Most modern producers shorten fermentation or use processed ingredients to save time. Yamasa turns the other way. They let the process unfold naturally. Enzymes slowly break down protein into amino acids, while the brewers do what they call supervising nature. They watch, they listen, but they don't interfere. The sauce itself decides when it's ready. And when it is, the result is remarkable. The liquid glows a deep mahogany, catching the light with red and gold reflections. The aroma is layered roasted wheat, faint smoke, a touch of sea breeze. When poured over tofu or grilled fish, it doesn't cover the flavor, it completes it. I also learned that Yamasa is trusted by chefs across the world, from small sushi counters in Tokyo to Michelin-starred restaurants in New York. Despite its prestige, it remains humble, faithful to its centuries-old methods. One small bottle costs only a little more than the generic brands, yet what you receive is not a product, it's craftsmanship. Since that night, I've kept a bottle of Yamasa in my kitchen. Just a spoonful can transform plain rice balanced vinegar in a dipping sauce, or give grilled fish a subtle sweetness that lingers. It's not just seasoning, it's a wise teacher, reminding me that true flavor is the reward of time, care, and respect. Standing in that small sushi bar, I realized something simple: flavor doesn't have to be loud to be remembered. Sometimes it only needs to be honest, and Yamasa is exactly that: honest, humble, and full of heart. It proves that even in a world obsessed with speed, there are still people willing to pause to listen and to let time do what it has always done: best create truth through taste. Soy sauce has traveled a long road from the firm cellars of old Japan to the fluorescent aisles of modern supermarkets. Along the way, it has been stretched, sweetened, and simplified until many forgot what it was meant to be. Yet bottles like Kikkoman and Yamasa remind us that real flavor still exists, built on patience and integrity. They're not perfect. Even the best soy sauces face industrial pressures, shelf life demands, and the challenge of staying affordable in a fast world. But they still carry something the others lost: respect for time, for craft, and for the people who make food with care. So maybe it's not about quitting soy sauce, but about choosing wisely. Because when you find the right one, the one that still listens to nature, you'll realize flavor isn't about salt or color. It's about truth waiting steadily in a bottle.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.